Okay.
Thank you so much.
Perfect.
Oh.
Okay, so let's start. Hi everyone, it's Airteam community. We have two members of our community, two founding members, Yulia and myself, Alisa. And we have our guest today, Tayyab Hussain, who is working now on some Web3 ventures and trying to help marketplaces to build them on chain. But I think Tayyab will introduce himself much better. And can you please talk about your company, about yourself, what's your background, and why do you why you consider yourself as a Web3 expert nowadays?
I mean, I feel like a Web3 expert might be a strong term, but I was going to get into sort of who I am. So I originally started my career as a chemical engineer, then ended up becoming a founder of a hardware business for the trucking industry. That ended up failing, but I learned a lot, and I have basically gone on to work at 3 different startups, all 3 who have had some level of success. So 2 of them were acquired. One is pretty close to IPOing. And I decided I wanted to quit my job and be a founder again. And I will tell you, it is like the most stressful thing ever. So like I told Yulia and Alisa earlier, I have not taken a vacation in a very long time, and I'm finally going to take one in a few weeks, and I'm going to go do that in Lisbon. I have been building in crypto for the past 3 years, basically since the start of the pandemic. I have gone through almost every iteration of almost every different idea. And I finally think I am on the right path, but being a founder, I know that there are still lots of there's still quite a bit of a journey ahead of me, and there's things will change. Anything else you want me to cover? So I will talk about what I am working on at the end, but I will leave that for the very end after I can set the context of Web3 first. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure. So let's talk about Web3 and what is it and how it's changing our lives, and yeah, what should we know about that?
Awesome. So people talk about Web3 in like many different contexts. People say, it's crypto, it's blockchains, it's Web3. Some people use them interchangeably and they believe that they're all the same thing. I strongly disagree. They're not the same thing. Crypto is basically this math that uses cryptography to give us certain properties. The properties of authentication and the properties of verifiability. Cryptography basically says that if I say the word hello, but I sign it with my secret password, no one else in the entire world could have sent you that message saying hello and pretended to be me without having my password. And that is so critical, because what it says is I now have control over everything, and no one can pretend to be me unless I get hacked. And that's really critical. So what blockchains do is that they use this characteristics of cryptography, and they create an immutable ledger. They create basically a database that can never be changed by anybody. And that gives us some very interesting properties. The article that I believe is probably the most important article to read if you want to understand why blockchains are so important, it is one called Atoms, Institutions, and Blockchains. It is quite literally the most important crypto read, in my opinion. And I can share a link with the Airteam group after this. So Web3 becomes the explosion of software and applications built on top of these databases. So Facebook has a database of all kinds of things, but now there's a shared database that anyone can build on top of. And that's really important. We finally have a shared state of database that anyone can use. And it allows for really interesting types of businesses. And it allows the user a lot of control. I'll stop there. I think there's somebody else joining. I'll let them in. So the next thing ends up becoming, why do we need blockchains, right? And again, I highly recommend reading this 25-minute article. So humans, we are network species. We work in companies, we live in cities, we operate in communities, we live in countries. We are by default a network species. Humans do not like being alone. We like organizing in networks. But networks need rules. They need to know, okay, this is bad, this is good, this is allowed, this is a penalty for doing these types of behaviors. You go to jail, you have to pay a fine. If you drive too fast or in a school zone, you'll get your license revoked. We need rules to have a civilized system, a civilized network. But what happens in every type of network in the world is that the people at the center of the network, the people creating the rules, end up becoming too powerful. It is a classic problem of any history, any civilization ever, right? It's Bezos. He's at the center of a network that grows really big, and now he's very powerful. There are kings, there are dictators, and we don't have a system of not relying on humans until blockchains. So what blockchains allow us to do is say, we no longer give control and give the right to people, and we're actually going to let software that everyone can read, everyone can see, it cannot be changed, and we're going to let the software become the most important way for us to govern a system. If this person does this, they get penalized. And there's no racism, there's no sexism. It is, if you do this, this will happen to you, no matter who you are, what you do. And that is a brand new way of organizing humans that did not exist in the past. So I know I said a lot there. I'm going to keep going. So what is a really powerful example of an application built on blockchains? Bitcoin is the most well-known, right? There are only 21 million Bitcoins that will ever exist. It has to be mined. No new Bitcoins can be created except this one way. And the inflation schedule will be exactly what it says it is because it's built into the code. And by 2140, we will have no more new Bitcoin. So we still have 120 years of new Bitcoin coming into the system. And okay, why does that matter? What is this random Bitcoin thing like? Okay, well, right now the U.S. government is like dealing with this whipsaw where in the pandemic they needed to print money and they put $4 trillion into the economy, and it turns out, oh shit, we overreacted and now we have to raise interest rates, right? So because humans were behind this decision, they weren't aware of the consequences. And we don't have a say in, oh, do you print $4 trillion or do you not print $4 trillion? Bitcoin says humans should not be at the center of deciding what happens with money. Like the classic example is just the way that church and state was separated. It is just as important for money and state to be separated from one another so that our money cannot be governed by fallible humans. And that is the promise that Bitcoin tries to make to us. Aave. Aave is like a lending protocol. It's like getting a loan. Today, you have to go sit in front of a loan officer. They look through your credit history. They say these things. Then they decide, okay, I like you. I'm going to give you a loan. And I will give you a loan at this rate. So that works pretty well in developed countries. In undeveloped countries, it's actually pretty hard to get a loan if you don't have a ton of capital already, or you're going to get loans at a very high interest rate. What these protocols like Aave say is like, hey, I don't care who you are. Here are the rules. You want to borrow DAI, which is a decentralized stable currency. I will give it to you at 2.12% interest rate, and you have to pay that back. And I don't care who you are. I don't care how much you take, but these rules apply to every single person. And what you've done is you've created a mechanism that anyone in the world can get access to the same thing. at any time. And no person can take that loan away from you. Only the code can, and you have to know the rules of that system. But those rules will never change on you. Another example, Audius. Audius is basically like Web3 Spotify. We know the classic example of Spotify takes money for each stream and the artists don't make that much money. There's sort of a misnomer there. Actually, most of the money goes to the record labels and actually less goes to Spotify. But what Audius says is, hey, you can self-publish every stream, you make the money, we don't take anything of it. Or if we do, we take 1% or 10%, or you actually get to decide how much the protocol takes, and then we use that money to make Audius better. And that is so important, that the platforms that we are putting music onto, we actually own and we govern, and they can't change the rules on us. And that is such a critical thing for us to do. So I'm going to get into sort of what does it take to succeed in Web3 after this, but I'm going to pause here for any questions. Cool. No questions? So what do you need to thrive in Web3?
Yes, may I ask
go ahead,
you?
Pavel.
Yes. Could you explain what the type of protocol Audius uses? What's the type of coins, maybe the platform of blockchain? What the platform is used in Audius?
Audius. So I'm not a super expert on Audius, but I do believe that Audius. So I'm gonna do homework live in front of you.
Yeah, how it works? How it works?
So I think we can. So there's Audius, Audius.code, which is again basically like Spotify, but let's say I create a piece of music. I can upload that to a decentralized sort of file storage thing. And if anybody wants to listen to that piece of music, I simply go and click it, and then I pay like a monthly subscription to listen to the music. And I every time I listen, they make money from that. I'd have to go into the details on exactly how it works, but you can like the best part about Web3 is like you can literally look all of this up. Everything is public. So like this thing is in my way. If you go to audius.org, you can quite literally look at, okay, what is the a decentralized protocol for audio content look like? And it explains everything to you. There's no proprietary software in Web3. It is all open source, and it tells you exactly how all of it works. That is the best part about Web3.
Do they have their own token?
Correct. They do have their own token called Audio.
Is it based on the Bitcoin or Ethereum or anything?
It's probably Ethereum, but I'd have to look it up. It probably says it somewhere. But again, I'd have to look it up. I'm not an expert. It seems that yes, it does seem to be an Ethereum based token.
Ethereum token. Okay. Thanks. Good. Yes, move on.
Cool.
Okay.
So again, what do you need to thrive in Web3? Honestly, a lot of the same stuff that you need in Web2 is you need to be a team player. You got to work hard. You got to solve problems. You got to communicate. The same type of people are needed. You still need people writing software. You still need people marketing the software. You still need people managing people. The new thing in Web3 is a community manager. The way to think about Web3 differently is that it is open source oriented. So you're not writing proprietary software that nobody can look at. The goal of Web3 is that we write open source software that everyone can look at, but then we end up distributing tokens as ownership of that network over time. And so we win together rather than, oh, I'm going to take all the money and I'm going to keep it. And it actually turns out that when you share the wealth with other people, it turns out that you yourself end up having greater wealth because that network ends up growing because everyone is sort of an owner and they're like, oh, I own this thing. I want it to be successful. Web3 is also not one size fits all. So there are big crypto companies, there are mid-sized projects, there are startups, there are open source. And typically you can think of, if it's a big company, you're probably going to get traditional style job where they're going to pay your salary, you're going to get some equity, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas the smaller the company, you'll probably get paid less in dollars and more in whatever native token that they operate in. And that's typically true across that spectrum. And it's really up to you on what you want to do. Does it make sense for you to join an established Web3 company? Does it make sense for you to go work at a Web3 startup? One allows you to have a safe, secure job and income, and then the other one allows you to get more upside, right? It allows you to, hey, this token could be worth something huge in a number of years. You could also, the part of Web3 is you could do it part-time, and it's pretty easy. There's things called Gitcoin bounties, D-work. I dropped Airteam. I don't know what Yulia and Alyssa are up to, but I'm sure you can find out from them. You can also find DAOs. I honestly, just if you're on Twitter, you can find DAOs. There's another way you could get involved. So I promised in the beginning I'd talk about what I'm working on. We at Kasama, so I'm the CTO of Kasama, we are working on building a user-owned user testing platform. So what does that mean? It means Coinbase is launching a new product, and before they send it to the public, they want to test it out with a few users, get feedback, make sure things don't break, make those fixes before they go public, before they make a public release of that product. And they will typically compensate you in, let's say, $20, $30, $40, $50 for 30 minutes to have a conversation so that they can learn from you. What Kasama is doing is, one, bringing testers and bringing companies together and allowing them to do user testing among one another. But we are also distributing the ownership of that network to the testers, meaning over time, Kasama is actually owned not by me, but by the community of testers. And the reason why we believe that that's important is, one, the testers are doing all the work. I mean, they're showing up and they are literally sitting and spending 30 minutes of their time making the network valuable. And so it makes sense that they end up owning the network. Number two, we find that ownership is a powerful incentive. If I can tell you, if you are a good user tester and you can get paid, but you also own this network, it becomes a very powerful incentive for you to say, oh, of course I want Kasama to be successful, because if I make Kasama successful, I also benefit from that. And that's really my belief, is I want to see user-owned networks in the world. And that's what I basically have quit my job and making zero money trying to figure out. Classic example is Uber drivers should have owned a piece of Uber. They're the ones out there doing the work of driving people around. Why do they not own Uber? I 100% believe that they should have owned Uber. If you want to become, my number one thing that I tell people is come and sign up to be a tester and a potential owner of Kasama. All you have to do is go to our website, www.kasama.xyz. You end up just clicking this button, become a user tester. It'll ask you to fill out a form that helps us just understand who you are, get some basic information. And I will literally spend 15 minutes on a call with you explaining to you how everything works. So that's all for me.
Thank you so much for sharing. I have several questions, if you
Of course.
don't mind. Where did you study all of that? Can you recommend any courses or universities or something to understand Web3 or crypto or blockchain?
So what's interesting is, okay, number one, if you want to understand crypto, you do need to understand a little bit of cryptography. You just need to understand the basics of cryptography. You want to understand generally how the internet works, right? Understanding how the internet and how email works is really important to understand, because when we say the word protocol, it is truly a protocol. And the two most famous examples of protocols that are massive scales is email, which is known as SMTP, and the internet, which is HTTP. So understanding how those two work and understanding cryptography really helps you understand, okay, what is the foundational layer of what is going on? After that, honestly, it's actually more understanding humans than it is understanding technology. The internet was actually a pretty simple technology that got complicated over time because we made it more diverse and richer. But at the end of the day, it's just humans, right? Like the internet started with people buying books online or chatting in chat rooms or selling things on eBay and all of these things. And the goal is to understand, like, why did we come onto the internet? Like we could have sold things offline, we could have talked to our friends in person, but that is like the key thing to understand. There's a really good book called How the Internet Happened by Brian McCullough, which is like one of my favorite books. And it talks to you about basically all the big successes of the internet. How did they form? And it's literally one of my favorite books is reading that book or understanding what it took for the internet to happen. And it gives you an understanding of what does it take for crypto to happen and have a meaningful impact on the world. I did not go to school for crypto. I mostly just learned on the internet, pursued my own sort of interests, and sort of ended up where I am.
Thank you. If the person wants to learn more about the Web3, like after understanding of internet and everything, where to start?
Honestly,
Coursera or something?
The best thing to do is to use Web3. The best thing to do is to get some Ethereum, go use Uniswap, go use Compound, go use these products and understand, like, oh, okay, like this is how it works. Go to OpenSea, buy the cheapest NFT you can. Go to Zora.co and they do free NFTs, so go get a free NFT. Once you use the products, you'll actually understand it. Because actually so I can tell you that a lot of Web3, all of Web2 will end up being ported over to Web3. So it'll end up being the same products, except new stuff will happen in the future. It's just understanding, why is this version of the internet different from that version of the internet? That is the key thing to try and like focus on, and why it matters.
Yeah, it was my next question. Are there any areas or markets which will not work on Web3, or you think it will be our future?
I'm not 100% sure what will not, but basically anything on the internet can become Web3. Again, the thing to realize is Web3 allows for neutral systems. So Facebook doesn't have control over what can and cannot be banned. People can build their own applications on top of Facebook's database, or in Web3. So it creates competition. Understanding how networks work is also like one of the critical things. Like anything that is a networked business, and the internet, the most successful businesses on the internet were network businesses. Again, Facebook is a classic example. Those are the businesses that will be the most likely to become Web3.
Yeah, I agree. Which professionals do you think will be in demand to work in the Web3 ecosystem?
The same ones in Web2. It's literally the same ones. It's product managers, it's engineers, it's marketers, it's salespeople, it's business development people. Again, Web3 will feel like Web2, except it'll be more distributed and people will make a lot more money doing it, because you will end up actually owning a larger chunk of that future internet. So the answer is literally every type of job will be available in Web3.
And what about now? What professions are looking in Web3?
I mean, the classic example is like engineers will always be in demand. If you have a technical skill, you will always be in demand. Social media turns out to be a pretty powerful thing. So if you're good at social media, you will also have a job. If you're good at managing a community, that is one of the big things that people are struggling with, is like, how do we have a good community? How do we make sure everyone's doing appropriate things in the community? Growth growth can be marketing, growth can be sales, growth can be business development, will also be very important pieces of Web3.
What about soft skills? Do you need specific learnings or soft skills to work with you?
Right, like again, Web3, it's just humans, right? Like it's all just like one human talking to another human, working with 10 other humans. And so like the best you can work with people and humans, like you need everything you need in your personal life on how to deal with people. You will need those skills on how to deal with people in Web3, because that's what we are. We are just one human talking about another thing, telling another human why this thing is worth something. And it's important to, be able to deal with people.
How about specific tools? You just like, for example, on social media, you need to know how to use Discord, for example, Twitter, and classic media mix like Facebook or Instagram is not that important in Web3. What are other tools that you can mention that people would need to use in like Web3? Maybe some like programming languages that are not typical for like Web2, and what are the tools?
Yeah, so again, I think Web3, you don't need to change that much from Web2, right? It's just a different way of thinking and a different way of believing that the internet needs to look this way and not that way. The most important tool in Web3 is Twitter, by far. If you are
Discord.
No, Discord is likely going to fail the web. Like Discord, the company will be fine, but Discord in the long term, I don't believe is going to be a successful platform for communications among DAOs. It is just wild nonsense. There's just too much happening, and like we're humans, we don't deal well with noise. I like email. Like I personally, if I were to run a DAO, and I basically am going to be running a DAO, I'm going to operate it through email and not Discord. Just because I can't manage Discord. Discord makes my head hurt and gives me anxiety. But Twitter, because all the smartest people in crypto or Web3 are in Twitter. People post jobs, people post about new products, people DM each other on Twitter. It's like one of the most important ways to find and network with people. I have literally built an entire network primarily through Twitter.
I'm actually thinking maybe we don't use Discord, and we're not very good in that because we're not at the age, at the right age to use Discord, because I have the impression that 14, like 16 years old are much better in like navigating all the yeah, all the tools and like channels and Discord, they're doing it very like efficiently. And you just like mentioned DAOs, and we didn't talk much about DAOs. We're also thinking to do a DAO out of our community, and like profit sharing and mutual responsibility for the future of the company. Like, can you talk about it? Like, what are DAOs and what do you think about like the future? Because I'm here on Web Summit now, and every time I talk to someone like that we are building a DAO, people are like, okay, stop. Like, everyone is building a DAO. You know, this is like too much already, and it looks like a lot of hype around it. And do you think it's just a hype, or there is actually something very like practical and useful in the future?
And profitable.
Yeah, hopefully.
Okay, so let's answer one at a time. So are they valuable? Yes. I mean, there has already been very clear examples of successful DAOs. MakerDAO is the number one most clear example of a successful DAO. So if you want to look at that MakerDAO, MAKER. Here's the way I think about DAOs. Again, we are a network species. DAOs are nothing different than networks. And all a DAO is it's a set of rules. It's a set of like code that says, if you play by these rules, and if you can do these things, this thing will have this benefit. And I cannot lie to you about those rules. Meaning, if you contribute doing this, you get a share of the DAO. And the value of the DAO goes up by the more people wanting into the DAO, the more people want into the DAO by you communicating about the DAO. And a DAO is, the way I would think about DAO is like, a DAO is a set of rules or a set of contracts that other humans can coalesce around. They are rules and structures for people to say, oh, okay, I understand this. Like, if I do these things, this DAO benefits and I can succeed, or this DAO can succeed and we can all win together. It's more like setting up a government than it is like setting up a company. Are they profitable? It depends on your DAO. You can have a social DAO where the goal is to never make profit. That's okay. The way to think about a DAO is, don't think about it from the perspective of profit, but think about it from the perspective of cumulative treasury, meaning how much money does this group of people who are governed by these sets of rules, how much money can they accumulate through the operations of those people? And then as humans, we govern that treasury to make other beneficial processes. Again, it is like thinking like a government, that revenue that the government takes, that the DAO takes, is more like taxes. Those taxes sit in a treasury, and then that treasury is managed by the DAO, or managed by the public, basically the citizens of that DAO, and you can pay people. And maybe it's not profitable from a DAO perspective, but it might be profitable from a per person perspective. And that is where DAOs are very different than traditional companies. And not everything needs to be a DAO.
The question is, can it be, do you believe it can be like 100% decentralized, or DAO will still have like a group of people who will basically, like, it's like a hybrid? Yeah.
Again, it's a social Web3 is a social technology, and if people choose to collude in the DAO, sure, like it can be, there's no such thing as 100% decentralization, because decentralization is a spectrum. It's not binary. It's like, it is this likely to be decentralized. So if 30 people have one vote each, but 29 of them decide to make a decision together every single time, then it's basically the same as 2 votes. And that's not very decentralized. And that's the way to think about decentralization, is like, could hypothetically these people collude and do this thing? Or are the incentives built in such a way where everyone will only vote for what they truly believe in? And again, like, very much like a government. And so like, understanding Web3 is very much understanding people, but you're putting a lot of power in people's hands. And so understand that when you put that much power in people's hands, they will behave in a certain way.
Yeah, for me, DAO is more like a mindset than like a specific form of organization. It's about like that together we can create more. And if you think like, what can one person create, and what can like 100,000 of people or like 10,000 of people create together? Or like when you're making a decision, like when it's like DAO, you need to think like from very different perspective as a like classic company, let's say. And it comes from like community first, like collective decisions first. And it's just like that's the way of thinking. It's not really yet the way of like our organizational form, because like we cannot do like 100% decentralized, 100% like a pure DAO yet, maybe in the future, but not yet. So yeah.
I agree. I think the other part to really recognize is that it's not defined. Like, DAOs are not defined. Like, no one actually knows what's going to happen. We as people, we have the power of our imagination and our willpower to shape DAOs the way that we believe it can be beneficial to people. And let's be honest, there will be plenty of people who want to use DAOs as a force for evil, just the same way that people use anything in the world today as a force for evil. The big thing is like, what values do you hold, and what ethical things are you going to use this technology for? And that's really what it becomes, is like, we are literally the humans who get to form this technology, and it's so important for us to like recognize that power, but also behave with it in an ethical way.
Yeah, you just talked about companies, like well-established companies in like Web3 or startups in Web3. I have a feeling like we are all a startup, you know, like there is no like such a thing as like it's changing too fast, and it's kind of underdefined yet. And what people doing in Web3, they're like inventing the Web3. They're like inventing the industry and co-creating. Like it's like one big DAO, the whole Web3.
Correct. It's a movement. It's a movement, just the way we've had movements in the past, and that's okay. There have been lots of great movements in the world. There have also been some unfortunate movements that have happened in the world. Communism was a movement, and communism did take the brains and the minds, and it took over the minds of many people, and people believed in communism, but it turned out to not be a successful way of government, and so we have to recognize, and I am not claiming that I know the answer to this, but like, is Web3 a form of communism? And I mean that not as in like, I mean that from the perspective of like, it might be well-intentioned, but it could go in the wrong direction. I think we do have to take in the lessons of history on where did that mistake happen, and how do we make sure it doesn't go in that direction. I think it's too late to say, oh, if it's that scary, don't do anything about it, because the cat is out. Like it is out. Like it is going to happen. It's now like, what does it look like in the end? And I think that's the thing I think about all the time, is this thing can go in so many directions, but how do we take it in a direction that's actually productive for people, useful for people, beneficial to people? My whole goal is like, how do we end up creating like massively free markets that cannot be managed by governments, and can be managed by code? And I believe that if we can make free markets all around the world, we will like 100 to 1,000x the wealth that exists today. But that's my belief, and that's kind of the thing I'm working on.
There are some already some viable examples of such a like industries or markets that are very close to this free governments and decentralization.
I mean, the most classic, again, MakerDAO is a good example. So if you think about how does the US dollar exist, the US dollar is printed by the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve is the only company or the only entity in the world that gets to decide when and when not money gets printed. And MakerDAO says, hey, we're going to make a currency that matches the dollar, but here are the rules on how new dollars get printed, and that can never change. So here's the code, and new dollars can get made, but here's the rules on how new dollars get made, and anyone can make them. And you basically just created like a decentralized Federal Reserve, which is, has its pros and cons.
MakerDAO is a DAO that what is their token? DAO?
They have two tokens, DAI, which is basically like the US dollar, and then the second one is Maker. It's just called Maker. And what they use the Maker token for is governance over the mechanism, the set of contracts that makes the US dollar, makes the DAI token. So if we want to change, we believe X, Y, and Z needs to be different, the Maker token holders can vote and say, this is what, we don't believe this is right, we believe this is the better way to do it. And MakerDAO has gone through plenty of those situations on what it looks like. I am a MakerDAO holder, by the way, like full discretion, like I am a Maker governance holder.
What are other DAOs that you're a member of?
Loosely, not many. I kind of dabble across the board, but I will tell you my full-time focus is on Kasama. That's where I spend 99.95% of my time. I am not good at
DAO already?
Sorry. We are not. We are. So that's what I'm saying, right? Like I don't like the term DAO. I think I like the term user-owned network. And then that user-owned network is governed by a set of smart contracts, which I think traditionally could be called a DAO. But every time I think you say the word, or people say the word DAO, they think of something, they think differently. And I like to abstract. I think words are very important. So I try to choose my words very carefully.
Do you have any other questions?
I don't have. Pavel, do you have any?
Yes, a couple of questions. You mentioned, Hussein, that it is an opportunity to take free NFT. Can you explain where can we find it? So, just to practice. The next question, can you explain any cheap crypto wallets just for fun, try and some practice in this industry?
Yeah, so you can check out Zora, which allows you to mint NFTs for free. Some of them are, like if you look, if you click the create button in there, you can find all kinds of free NFTs. You will have to pay gas fees. All crypto wallets are free. Getting Ethereum from your local currency to crypto is not free, and you typically have to go through like Binance. I think Binance is probably like the biggest global player. In the US, it's Coinbase primarily, but so you want to get some, maybe, I don't know how much you can afford, so I don't want to make any assumptions, but you want to get a very small amount, maybe $20 to $25 worth. of
Mhm.
Ethereum. And then basically you can go from there.
Mhm, mhm.
And my
Okay.
favorite wallet is either Coinbase wallet or Rainbow wallet, or Argent, Argent. Those are like the three best wallets, I think.
Thank you. Good. I have no any questions. Thank
Okay,
you.
yeah, no problem.
Very good.
Thank you so much. Alisa, do you have one?
No, I
And
ran out of questions.
Okay.
Yes,
maybe
Carlos?
last question. Yes, maybe last question. Very interesting, Hussein. What is your how to explain? What is your history in the crypto? Why you here? What you love in the Web3?
I like that question because I think that is why I like Web3, is because I do have an important reason why I'm here. So I come from a nationality of Pakistan. A Pakistani by nationality. My parents immigrated to the United States in 1990. My dad immigrated in 1979. My mom immigrated in 1993. She was pregnant when she came here. She had me like 2 months after. So I was born here. So I got the privilege of growing up in the United States and getting all the benefits of the United States, the education, literally all of that. And my parents were able to my parents were factory workers, and they were able to work their butts off. And we went from 9 people in a 1-bedroom apartment to now like 4 people in a 5-bedroom house. And my parents were not the only story. I have 70 other family members in a small town of where I live today, and they all had the same story. They all started from a very poor, very like small apartment situation, and they just worked their butts off. And now everyone in my family owns a home in the United States. But unfortunately, that's not true for my family members that were in Pakistan. And I basically grew up having to think about, why did my family in Pakistan not succeed, but why did my family in the United States did succeed? And the realization I came up to was that there was a stable financial and legal / justice system in the United States that said, hey, if you work hard, you will be rewarded, and nobody can take anything away from you illegally. Like, it's a generally quite just system. And I realized that in Pakistan, it's almost impossible for us to get that, because the powers that are there, they're worried for themselves. They're not worried about the average Pakistani. And when I found crypto, I realized crypto is a financial and legal system wrapped in one that is internet native. There are 5 billion people on the internet. All of them can earn money and not have it taken away from them in crypto. And that is what I want to see. I want people to be able to earn from crypto and not their money, and their money can't be taken away from them. And they can take that money and they can spend it locally however they want. And they no longer have to rely on governments to be able to provide something for them. I want people to become self-sufficient. And then on top of it, I think the big thing with user-owned networks is, like, not only are you just earning $10 for doing a user testing, you're actually owning the network. So if the network becomes valuable over time, you own a very large portion of that network, or not a very large, but a significant portion of that network, which actually ends up helping you preserve wealth. Saying, hey, I own 0.01% of Facebook, which is still worth a decent amount of money, and I can pass that on to my kids. And that is just not true for like 90% of the world. And I think my wife and I literally talked about this yesterday, and I think it is quite literally the biggest tragedy of the world that we live in, and it's the reason why I've decided to like dedicate my life to it. It's a long answer, but that's that's me.
Mm-hmm. And do you earn your all money in the Web3 in this industry? Maybe
Do I earn my own money, or do I have my own
have
money?
a job in any?
So I am a founder of a Web3 company. So that means I am broke, but I am pretty dedicated to the mission I want to see. And like I said, if you want to make money in crypto, come join, and we'll make sure you make some money doing user testing. You would be a very unique person for us to do user testing with, because you represent a group that is not easily accessible. Julia, I knew you wanted to say something.
How can I to type you, maybe your Twitter or maybe Facebook?
So I'll share my Twitter. Here, 1 second. I'll share that, and I think Julio is trying to say something. So that's my Twitter. This is my email. And again, yeah, like you can find me at either one of those. I'm pretty responsive. So you want to email me, I'll email you back. If you message me on Twitter, I'll message you back.
Thank you.
I think that's it. We have 2 minutes. Thank you so much for sharing. Many things they are resonates with me a lot, especially your story about why are you in Web3. We will share a recording of this meeting. It was really interesting. Thank you so much, and have a good day, evening, and everything.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And then, like I said, Julia and Alyssa, I would love if you guys would sign up to be testers for crypto products. Like I said, it's very easy for me to say, hey, you'll make money and you'll be an owner of Kusama. So come join us.
Okay, we'll try.
Clear. Thank you.
Of course. Have a good one, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.